Welcome to Prairie Fire Lines, the show where we spark conversations about prescribed fire and its role in conserving Canada's prairie grasslands. I'm Kat Zenz, your host and Communications and Outreach Officer for the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange. We work with partners across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba to bring fire back to the land safely, effectively, and with respect for the Indigenous traditions that have guided grassland stewardship for generations. We acknowledge that the prairie provinces that we work on are situated on Treaties 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the homeland of the Métis. Each episode, you'll hear from people in the fire world about how prescribed fire works, why it matters, and the many ways it helps our prairie ecosystems thrive. So cozy up by the fireplace. This is Prairie Fire Lines, where we keep the conversation burning. Hello everyone, this is Kat Zenz and welcome back to Prairie Fire Lines. In today's episode, I'm joined by Kody Wohlers, who's the Land Stewardship Director for the Loess Hills at the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation and owner of Wohlers Fire Equipment. Kody brings over a decade of prescribed fire experience to the table, having completed more than 1,000 prescribed burns throughout his career. In addition to managing land in Iowa, he's also shared his expertise north of the border, serving as a lead trainer for the Canadian Prairies TREX in Saskatoon from 2022 to 2024. He's also contributed to the planning process once again this year. We'll dive into Kody's accomplishments and challenges working with fire in Iowa, as well as his experiences leading training exchanges and cooperative burn weeks across both the US and Canada. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Prairie Fire Lines. Hi, Kody. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today. How are you?
You bet. Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So could you introduce yourself and what you do to our listeners?
Yeah, I'm Kody Wohlers. I'm the Loess Hills Land Stewardship Director for the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation in the western part of Iowa, down in the United States.
Can you talk a bit more about what the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation does?
Yeah, so the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, we're an accredited land trust. So we have kind of three-part mission. You know, our overall mission is to protect Iowa's land, water, and wildlife. But we do a lot of permanent protection. So that's through private conservation easements, donations, acquisition, and work with a lot of our partners, a lot of the different government entities, and try to get most lands into their hands for long-term public use and perpetual protection. Another part of our mission is we have long-term owned properties that we do, full-on management and stewardship on. So everything from prescribed fire, invasive weed control, and then we have quite a few ag acres as well that we work with farm tenants and grazers and work through those avenues. And then another thing we do is public advocacy. So working on the political side of conservation in Iowa, having a voice in the capital to advocate for the people, for the resource that we have, all of our different ecosystems, and try to educate people on the education or on the conservation measures that can help their lands to preserve and protect everything that they might have that they might not even know they have, such as a remnant prairie, an active wetland, a fen, all kinds of different things that are unique in the state of Iowa that are very, very precious to us.
All right. And for you specifically, what got you into your current role?
Yeah, so a little bit of my background is I grew up on a farm in western Iowa, very local to where I currently am now, and just love the outdoors, loved hunting, fishing, Um, just watching nature from a tree stand while deer hunting, everything from the squirrels and the rabbits and the bugs all the way up to our big critters. And so I went to college and got an environmental science degree and a biology minor. And in my junior year, I did an internship uh, doing some park management. And then the following summer, I did an internship doing some natural areas management work, and really fell in love with that natural areas management side of things. Iowa is the most altered state in the United States, so we only have roughly 0.1% of our native remnant prairie left in the state, and that number is diminishing virtually every day. So being able to be a part of preserving some of the last known prairies that are just so critical and so vital to why Iowa is what it is, what raises such great crops, and then protecting those habitat corridors and those transition areas for a lot of the migrations that happen, because Iowa is flanked on both sides by the Missouri River and the Mississippi River. So a lot of the migratory waterfowl and stuff use those as flyways to fly south for the winter. And yeah, just grew into that love of that niche of stewarding the land, being outside, um, having a lasting impact. And I worked for a county conservation board for 14 years before transitioning over to the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation in 2021, as they expanded their program and offered up a new position in Western Iowa in the Loess Hills.
So you manage the land on the Loess Hills?
Yep, yep. So currently managing about 3,000 acres of long-term Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation owned properties in the Loess Hills. And then, my personal farm is in the Loess Hills, and then managing and monitoring private conservation easements as well that are privately owned, but we monitor them yearly through my organization.
And going back into what you were saying about preserving the prairie in Iowa, so how long has your organization been doing prescribed fires?
So the organization was founded in 1979, and I would say mid 80s, early 90s is when they first started doing prescribed fire on a semi-regular basis. They expanded their stewardship team more in the early 20 teens, so 2010, 2012 timeframe, and since then have ramped up on the prescribed fire side of the world, and more holistic management on their properties, and more of an impact from the fire side.
Do you know around how many prescribed fires you have done or your organization has done? Or how many acres by estimate?
Yep, I do. So me personally, I've done a little over 1,000 prescribed fire burn units. I surpassed that early this spring. And as a whole, each year we're burning roughly 40 to 50 burn units internally within the organization. And for me personally, I burned a little over 95,000 acres in my career.
Wow. That is so much. Oh my goodness. So with this burning, and you talked a bit about this previously, but what are your specific land management objectives with your burn program?
Yeah, so it depends on the site, obviously, whether I'm targeting woody vegetation, targeting cool season exotics. But any prescribed burn I do, I have a specific ecological goal, and I usually have a very specific prescribed fire goal. So whether that is training of younger firefighters, getting people more experience in various ways, building a network or landowner neighbor relationships, we always have different ecological and prescribed fire goals, and they vary, and they might even vary on the same burn unit from burn to burn over time.
So like elaborate a bit more on like what you've noticed from these burns. Like what are the key things that you notice about like the vegetation or how for example like maybe wildlife interact with the land after it's been burned? Like maybe it's different after a week, a month, a year even. What are the key things that you notice post burn?
So post burn, one of the main things that I'm looking for is, what is that ecological response? And did I meet my ecological goals as far as, if my target was to kill 70% of eastern red cedar under 5 feet, I'll go out post burn, give it 2 or 3 weeks, and then go physically put eyes on that and see if did I meet my goals? Did I fall short of my goals? And then look at the weather conditions from that day. And if I have another burn unit that I want to meet those same goals, I can tweak that prescription a little bit, so that the weather suits, the fuel loading suits, and I can get the product out of that burn that's the desired effect.
So I understand that you've had your son out on some prescribed fires. Curious as to what it's like doing burns with him.
People know me kind of as the local fire guy, and obviously I come home smelling like smoke, 40 days a year or more, and go on Western wildfire details out west. I have for the last decade in the summer, and so my family sees that impact. They've probably seen or greatly observed that transition in me and my confidence level of what I do now compared to what I used to do. So my son has showed the interest in learning the trait of prescribed fire. So, you know, I'm not going to turn down a set of hands no matter what their age are. And he is he's becoming quite the fireman. He loves to run the UTV for me. He'll run the torch for me. He's always wanting to learn and challenge himself as well. And the physics behind fire and fire behavior is something that he and I both enjoy watching and talking about while we're burning. And it gets us out on the landscape together. And then some of his interest is, for the last 15 years or so, I've also been building some prescribed fire equipment, so some slip-ons in the garage that go in UTVs, and he's started to help me now that he's a little older, start assembling some of those, and it's been fun watching him learn, watching him grow, seeing his excitement to help build with me. We talked about him potentially taking over that business someday, and that excites me that, if I could start a legacy that he can continue, after I'm done with it or retired or gone. Um, that's something that I cherish is where I started to where I am now, and the family support behind all of it.
That's so special. I love that. Into your role as a leader
Yeah.
and doing cooperative burn weeks and such, I know that you have a burn boss credential, if I'm correct. Can you talk more about how one achieves this and like more about what it means to be a burn boss on the fire line?
One of my strong niches that I've done in my career is being able to burn with multiple agencies and collaborate together. Um, it's no easy feat, having those tough conversations on the front end with somebody you've never met, never burned with. They might not know your history, you might not know theirs, and coming to that common ground as a burn boss and just getting that mentorship, getting that trust built, um, burn after burn, to the point where, after a few seasons, you're just like a finely oiled machine, and doing what you do, basically second nature, working together. So, that's one of my goals every year is to kind of mentor or bring somebody up to the next level. Whether that's, if they're a squad boss, getting them more comfortable, getting them better experience, or taking a young burn boss and get them more experiences to be a seasoned burn boss over time.
Or what inspired you to take on that role?
Um, I would say it was just kind of a personal goal. Um, and I'll even take a step back. So, within any organization, there are very, very few anywhere that can do every burn that they want to do internally within their own staff. There's not a lot of staffs that have, the right number of people, the right number of equipment, the right experience level within their people to do everything that they need to do. So, this is how, at least in the Loess Hills, we take, those experiences and those smaller staffs, pair them up, and instead of doing one or two burns a day, we might do three or four, and everybody comes together to burn together for the entire day, and we get more done at the end of the day. Because we can operate more efficiently, we can operate more confidently with having those additional resources and having more eyes, more expertise. And it's just a giant time saver in the end, um, to make it all work. So that's where I would say my personal goal was to get people together, have them collaborate, and just build a giant network where on any given day somebody can request, three or four bodies, and three or four are going to rise to the occasion and go help and make it happen.
So, going even beyond that, so how do you and your organization work with other agencies to create and develop a sufficient burn program, even going into the cooperative burn week?
It's just, having that good communication, having those open lines to reach across and have a conversation with somebody, ask them what their goals are, have them ask you what your goals are, share those, and see if they align, and do what you can to raise up the next generation, or raise up that other organization. And it's all in the name of building capacity within your region.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, within, say a county by county, or for you, your rural municipalities, one might be doing a couple, a couple hundred acres, while the next door neighbor might not be doing any. And if you can get them to at least start doing some, then that's building the capacity. That's getting more fire on the ground. And if you can do it safely and effectively, that builds the trust within the community, and it starts building on that fire culture.
Of course. So, with these burn weeks and with TREX, how long have you been doing those types of fire events specifically?
So I did my first official TREX event in 2010. It was one of the first ones that the Nature Conservancy in the United States held, and it was in west central Nebraska. And I've been a part of at least one a year ever since.
Wow.
So looking at 15 years, and a lot of time and sweat equity put into one, training myself, and two, training others, and training that next generation.
Understanding the role of TREX as a training exchange, I'm kind of curious as to what your role was like when you first started in 2010 versus what you do now 15 years later.
So in 2010, at the first one, I was just a firefighter, just the low man on the totem pole grunt, um, trying to work up into that squad boss level, or that crew boss level. and spent a couple years in that role and just kept building my confidence, kept building my my qualifications, my credentials, and got up to the point of in 2017, uh, took over the cooperative burn week in the Loess Hills as the incident commander, and have been in that role um, ever since. And then through a lot of the TREXs, I mentioned boosting my qualifications. So in the United States, we have a qualification system known as the NWCG, or National Wildland Coordinating Group. So working through the position task books and the credentials needed to keep climbing the ladder, following that path to get to where I am today as a qualified RXB2, Type 2 certified burn boss, and a task force leader.
So going into the cooperative burn week in the Loess Hills that you were mentioning, so we modeled our own tracks off of that too. So I want to know more about that and what goes into organizing that type of event and how you pull it off.
Yeah, so the co-op burn week, um, we initially put it together in 2016, and we saw the need to have an event that didn't have restrictions on agency qualifications. So we wanted everybody to be able to participate, so we didn't have to turn anybody away at the door, just in the name of working together, teaching people, um, building those relationships, and then ultimately boosting the fire capacity within our local region. So that's where we started, and started off as a fairly small group. There was, I think, 34 participants um, in our first cooperative burn week, like 8 or 9 different agencies, and just starting to get out there, just starting to work together, starting to get to know each other. There was a lot of new staff turnover, so getting those people some experiences working with some of the more experienced firefighters in the region. And that cooperative burn week has evolved into reaching out and having outside personnel outside of the region join, people from other states, people from other countries. So now we're to the point where we cap it at roughly 100 people every year, and we're turning down, 20 to 30 a year, um, just from our applicants. We've had people from, I think, 13 different states, 3 different countries come to the event over the last 10 years. So that's kind of the history of the Loess Hills Co-op Burn Week. Um, Pairing that up with the Canadian TREX, in 2023, um, a guy by the name of Jeremy Bailey gave me a phone call. He's with the Nature Conservancy, and said, "Hey, I got an opportunity for you. I think you're the guy to go teach some prescribed fire in the Canadian provinces and the northern Canadian prairies." And um, I'm not gonna lie, was a little bit intimidating going to another country and not knowing what I'm getting myself into, but I saw it as a great opportunity to meet others, and in the name of boosting fire capacity, boost it within the Great Plains region, within the prairie region of North America. So yeah, that's how I got involved. Ended up meeting Rennie Grills out at a prescribed fire event in the central Nebraska that summer, and drove up in October of 2023, and that's kind of the rest is history. We've been off and running ever since.
Mm, Rennie Grills. Um, yeah, like from what you've been saying about even the Loess Hills tracks and like having that growing amount of applicants and having this increased demand, like we are seeing this with our treks as well this year. We
Mhm.
we have our biggest one yet this year with the cap of 16 having to turn away. 40. So
Yep,
just like having that increased demand and getting inspired to organize even more in the future. It's definitely it's definitely something, and it is very exciting to see more and more of an international interest as well in doing these types of programs. It's super promising. And as you were,
absolutely. And it speaks to, for one, it speaks to the demand and the amount of excitement and searching for this type of an event people are looking for. And then two, it speaks to the product that's been put out there in previous years. So if you're putting on a good event year after year, people are going to want to come join, have that experience, and take that as a springboard for their own careers.
for sure. Yeah, and like having that accessibility, like letting anybody join and gain those skills and be able to pass it on to others and throughout their agencies. Yeah, it's a very great initiative. So going more into that, I want to know from your perspective, can you run through what a cooperative burn week or a TREX event looks like from start to finish?
Yeah. Um, so, a Co-op Burn Week event, it's basically a year of planning on the front end. There's a lot of logistics that people don't see. Um, Planning, lining up everything from the facility to getting people to be there, um, caterers, housing, you know, the whole gauntlet of stuff, lining it up. So that's some of the stuff that starts a year out in advance, and then over time, we have built what we call an incident management team. So the planning committee, and we divide up the different roles or the different responsibilities for the event to different people. So that way, it's not just one person trying to hold up the weight of everything that's going on. That way, you have multiple people focused on smaller um, smaller portions of the event, and they can do a better job if they're focused on one thing instead of 8 or 9 or 10 other things. So, you know, we have at least 4 planning meetings on the front end of the event. Um, and then, leading up to the event, the week before, we have kind of our last touch, if you will, with the planning committee. A year ago, we started implementing a pre-event webinar. So that gave participants, especially the new participants to the event, an opportunity to ask questions, kind of have a conversation about what the expectations are for the event, and get some of those Monday morning questions out of the way that anybody and everybody that comes to something new is going to have. So the more we can alleviate some of those nerves and stuff on the front end, obviously the faster we can hit the ground running on the week of the event, because we're trying to stack a lot of stuff into a 5-day window. And when you're planning an event a year out in advance, you're 100% weather dependent on what you can do. So that's our pre-event webinar. We have a planning meeting on the Sunday and leading up to the event, kind of doing the last things, lining out what we're going to do on Monday, making sure crews are designated, equipment's designated, all of those things. And then hopefully by that point, we've done enough planning and everything that the chess pieces just fall into place, and whatever falls in front of us from a weather standpoint, we adjust, and that's what we go with during the event. So most of the time we're running 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So, you know, five five days of that standpoint. Um, it gets tiring, not just from the physical standpoint, but participants get mentally drained because you're taking in a lot of information, you're doing stuff that you haven't done before, you're having a lot of conversations that with new people that might be tough conversations, whether you're giving them constructive feedback or you're receiving constructive feedback, because everybody's trying to raise the bar for themselves. Everybody's trying to elevate and teach people to basically take your brand new firefighters that have never seen fire all the way up to your burn boss incident commander, and can we turn everybody up at least one click? So that's the ultimate goal in building fire capacity and growing as a fire community and has all the personnel. So that's the general outline and outlook. Then post event, we do a summary. We have after action reviews, discuss what went well, how can we improve the next one, and it's right into planning for the next year's event. Really not a lot of downtime from the planning side.
No, and I'm witnessing this firsthand right now well, this is my first year with the CPPFE, working with the IMT on planning this upcoming TREX that we're having. There is so much that goes into it, so many little details that we have to bring up and like address. And yeah, it is a lot. I really commend all of you guys for doing that as well with your own respective events, because it is a lot of work. And yeah, I appreciate the effort. And as you were saying too before, I imagine like taking in this new information could definitely be overwhelming. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would be your advice for people who go to treks and how to deal with the mental and also like the physical downsides that could potentially happen?
Yeah. Nope. Number one is, you know, leading up to the event, make sure you're out walking, you're out hiking. So physically, you have that internal stamina, your legs, you might be walking 4, 5, 6, as much as 8 or 9 miles a day, depending on what your job duty might be. Um, so making sure that from the physical side, you're doing what you can so you're prepped. Um, One of the most critical things and things we see time and time again is people coming that don't have their boots broken in. So make sure that, if you have new boots, don't bring them day one and you haven't put them on your feet yet. Make sure you break those in a little bit, get them nice and comfy and soft, because that'll make your whole event go better from a personal standpoint. Two, make sure you're up on your nutrition. Make sure you're fueling your body to take some of those long hours, some of that physical abuse that fire brings. Most people aren't used to carrying 10, 15, 20 pounds on their back for an extended period of time. As humans, we don't do that by nature every day. So make sure you're in that physical standpoint. One of the most critical things that I can tell you is come with the mindset that you're going to learn something, you're going to teach somebody something, and be open to other people's perspectives, and be patient. When you're dealing with like the Canadian Prairie Treks this year, dealing with 60 people, and you have the law of inertia, it takes a minute to get everybody moving. It takes a little bit to get the wheels rolling. But once the wheels are rolling, it's just like a fine-tuned machine. You just keep building on the previous day, and you just keep going. The other thing I would say is during the week, try to rest, take care of your body. Sleep when you can. Try to limit your late nights and crawl into bed and get some good sleep, because that's the best way to rehab your body and rejuvenate it for the next day. It really truly is a marathon. So it's short sprints, but it really truly is a marathon. I hope that doesn't scare anybody away, because it's going to be, especially for your first timers, it's a life-changing event in your career. You're going to meet people that you will work with and know for the rest of your life.
For
I have
sure.
friends all over the country that I met at TREX events that I'm still keeping in touch with. Um, Rennie and I, we we send messages back and forth at least weekly, if not daily anymore. And I've only known him for just a short 3 years, but very much respect his perspective, and he asks me things and I ask him things, and we both try to push ourselves to be the best that we can be and expand our own programs internally by what we're seeing each other do.
For sure. Having those working relationships and creating those through fire is just so impactful. So like going that more on the hardships, which is kind of spooky after that question. I understand that you have dealt with a wildfire around your cooperative burn week in Loess Hills before. So I'm curious about what strategies you and your team used to navigate this during and also after the fire and how this impacted your burn week.
Yeah, so it was 2023, spring of 2023. Very, very dry drought conditions in western Iowa. We were in a long-term drought, so 5+ years. Ended up having a critical fire day, had a wildfire, um, got onto one of our partner agencies property. Um, Very quick, concise communication as far as getting people dialed in as to what was going on, what we needed for people, where we needed them, the equipment we needed, and we put that plan into action very quickly, um, and got a phenomenal response. It's not very often you can put together an email, send it out at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, and have 55 people there before 6 o'clock in the evening of all conservation professionals. There's not a lot of places that can do that. And that's a testament to one, it's a testament to the commitment of our partners and to helping others. Two, people put the resource first. So, it might be an inconvenience personally. You might miss supper, you might have some other things going, but that was definitely a critical event where it was going to affect the community. So we jumped into action. One thing I will talk about on that during that wildfire was there was a very, very critical piece of territory that we ended up burning out. And I don't know another group that could have done it other than the group that was there. And we developed a plan in under 30 seconds and executed it nearly flawlessly. And that doesn't happen with anybody and everybody. That was a decade and a half of people working together, trusting each other, knowing the fuels, having the local knowledge that we needed, having all the equipment in place that we needed, and being able to work at a very, very high tempo, for a long, long period of time. That ended up being a 27-hour event where most people had very minimal sleep in the middle. So, that one, from my standpoint, it was career changing for multiple partners and good friends of mine. It changed their full-time job careers forever because of that wildfire scar. And now they have to deal with the post-burn effects, doing the cleanup, doing the invasive species management on the back end. But we've got a lot of pros out of that wildfire, of we can do this in a critical stress environment, in that high stress environment. Um, it's not something I would recommend, and it's not something you can plan for. But the more you train, the more you teach yourself in that high stress environment or in those critical points and learn your properties, and you can do some pretty amazing things. And yeah, that was definitely one in my career that I'll never forget, because it was a sad day to see it burn, but it was a monumental day when it came to where we currently are now as firefighters and as a group.
Sure. Wow, that sounds so intense. Oh my goodness. So going back into your role with our Canadian Prairies TREX, can you talk
Yep.
more about assisting our program up here in Saskatoon and what it was like stepping into a trainer role?
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, I was asked from our local training coordinator with the Nature Conservancy if I would be willing to travel north. And all I can say is you guys have welcomed me with more than open arms. From day one, it I never felt out of place. I never felt um, like I shouldn't be there. The hospitality is incredible from those at the TREX, and being able to have those open conversations and having a group of professionals and participants that really truly want to learn the trait and be there for that reason has been a great experience for me. It's boosted myself, my confidence level for sure. So I had always trained people, but I had never been kind of the go-to guy, the trainer guy. Um, so that was a new experience for me, but I'm always up for a good challenge, and I just couldn't say enough, especially that first year with the response from the participants. And Rennie's going to laugh at this, but I made a comment in an interview that they were like a bunch of sponges, and
Yes.
Rennie's never going to let me live that comment down
He quotes it all
because
the time.
I I don't know how to explain it. Like everything that myself and Brad that were there as training, everything that we were putting out there, everybody was absorbing it, taking it in, and then going out on the fire line the next day and putting it directly into action, which was awesome to see. And I've been to three of your events up there, and the the distance that your group has came in 3 short years is is well beyond anything that I could have ever planned for. So, you have people like Rennie, Maura, Dale, Carrie, who are now burning on their own and partnering with each other on a routine basis, getting more units done, getting more partners done, dividing up their crews so that they can go help multiple agencies on the same day, which was never a thing prior to 3 years ago. Um, Using lots of different ignition patterns that weren't used prior. Um, I just can't say enough about how far everybody has came and how everybody has just embraced us coming up and and sharing our knowledge of the trait. And I've never felt out of place. I've always felt extremely welcome, and can't say enough about the event. And you guys truly run a great event, and you're planning it to perfection for 2025.
Well, that is so flattering to hear. Thanks so much for that, Cody. We're so happy to have you. I'm wondering if you notice, I wonder if you notice any key similarities or differences between how you guys run these burn weeks in Iowa versus Saskatchewan, and also key differences in burning on US versus Canadian prairie?
Um, how I would say is, obviously we're dealing with the same ecosystem, but in the United States, at least this part much further south on a latitude line, we have much higher fuel load simply because we get more moisture. And so we have that higher fuel load, but we also have a longer burn season. And I think that is one of the difficulties, and that's one of the constraints that the Canadian prairies has is your burn window is so short in the spring and so short in the fall, um, that you guys have to be ready when it's time to go. So that's where I see you guys at. Um, Otherwise, it took us 10 years to get where we are. I told Rennie when I started up there, I wanted to get his program in 5 years, where it took us 10 to 15. And every year he asks me, what can I do? And I always put challenges out there for him. So, the first couple years challenged him as the incident commander, and then challenged him to have a few more people. And then last year I challenged him to, can you have 60 people instead of 45? And can you have 3 divisions so that you can do 3 simultaneous burns rather than 1 or 2?
Hmm.
And everybody's been up for the challenge. Everybody's wanting to push, and it's in the name of training and in the name of building capacity. And that's the beauty of the TREX is it is that safe environment where I'm not going to say you have a safety net underneath you, but you have the people and the expertise around you to support you and lift you up. Even if something doesn't go your way, if something doesn't go perfect, everybody comes with that mindset and that open approach that, hey, it went this way today. Tomorrow I'm going to improve on that. I'm going to do it a little bit better. I'm going to do it a little smoother. So that's what I'd appreciate about our event and the event up there is everybody comes with that learning mindset, and really it's all about having fun and getting fire on the landscape and building yourself up, having those building your decision making skills, the high stress environment skills. um, the fire line skills come along with it, but more than that, we're just building leaders. We're building people who can communicate with one another, verbally and over the radio and written wise. um, it's hard to replicate those high stress decision making skills, and then coordinating multiple resources at the same time, anticipating what the fire might do, reading the weather, um, leading people that you might not work with every day. And these are skills that expand well beyond the fire line. These are stuff that people who are leading field crews and leading young seasonals out of college, these are the skills you use every day when you're doing your daily job. So that's where I see the expanse coming, and the great things happening is everybody as people is are they're heightening their abilities.
Sure. So, and going off at that more, like from a trainer's perspective, as a trainer, so what are your biggest takeaways when you're training people like directly at TREX on the fire line? And I know that people who go to TREX have various levels of experience. So,
Yep.
what do you say about training those who are brand new to fire as compared to those with more direct experience?
So my approach with especially the ones that are brand new is to make it the best experience that it can be. So it takes away the potential fear of fire, but it sets the respect for fire that they need to have. That yes, it is a dangerous tool, but when used properly, it can be very, very safe and it can be very, very effective. And
we try not to go and give those people so much so quick that everything is over their head. So you need to be able to talk at those multiple levels, educational backgrounds. So that's usually what I do with my first time firefighters is I'll check in with them, multiple times throughout the day, have those little conversations, give them a chance to ask me questions or explain something that's happening directly in front of their eyes that they can see. And that way you can have that conversation and they can see it firsthand. And then, as you mentioned, with say the upper people, so like your squad bosses, your division leads, your burn boss, something like that, is challenge them to the next event. Like, what more can you do? There's always more to learn. Every fire, you should be learning something because no two fires are the same. Whether it's the same piece of ground or not, it's going to react different every year you burn it. So, yeah, just I would say challenging them, have those conversations, maybe getting people to try something they haven't tried before, whether that be a different ignition pattern, a different holding style, using a different piece of equipment. Just trying to keep people in that learning mindset and that continually evolving challenge. And if you're bored on the fire line as a holding resource, that's a good thing. If you're excited and you still want to keep going with a drip torch at the end of the day, that means that as a trainer, I did my job because you're mentally stimulated and you want to keep going. So that's the balance as the trainer. Brad and I joke about this a couple of times, on our drive up and back, is up there. I don't want to say it's easy being a trainer, but we kind of put the blueprint out there and then we turn you loose. And it takes a lot of the stress off of me compared to when I'm the incident commander at the Loess Hills Cooperative Burn Week. That's a lot more stress on me than teaching and training everybody in the room, at least from my perspective. So that's my 2 cents on it.
So going into like the lasting impact of TREX, have you experienced from your cooperative burn week, and the TREX events you've been part of, have you experienced a sense of growth of other prescribed burn programs, and like what impact has it had on other participating agencies?
Oh, 100%. It has definitely had an impact on multiple organizations. One I can use as an example, prior to them coming to the cooperative burn week event, they've been burning the same way for, a couple of decades. They thought they had good fire breaks. They were burning roughly the same amount of acres every year. And after one time coming to the co-op burn week, they saw what other people were doing with their fire breaks and their prep and their planning. And then that program now burns about 10 times as many acres per year as they did 5 years ago. And that's a testament to the commitment. It's also a testament to being willing to swallow your pride and make a change for the better. And it takes buy-in. It takes organizational buy-in all the way up from the technicians and the field staff all the way up to the directors and the presidents. So that's where I see the growth coming. These organizations are also seeing, like I mentioned, those firefighters are not just bringing those firefighter skills home with them. They're bringing those leadership skills, those communication skills, and all this other intangibles that you can't calculate when you go to this event. And being willing to make a phone call and say, I have this invasive problem. How do you deal with it? And just asking somebody from another organization how they do something. That's a big step for some people, is just making that first phone call. So great things have happened to multiple agencies. I could go on and on about lots of different organizations, how it's expanded. As a whole in the Loess Hills, in 2003, we were burning about 3,000 acres a year, and now we're burning about 25,000 acres a year, 20 years later. So that's a big jump.
It's huge. And then how do you envision the future of these burn programs in both the US and Canada then?
I think all will continue to expand in some realm. Obviously we all have our limitations, whether it be budget, housing capacity, staffing capacity, what have you. But yeah, I think especially for the Canadian prairies, I can see a lot more organizations getting into that realm of prescribed fire and building more of a culture. And there's a lot there to do. There's a lot to train, upgrading everything. It's a process. It's not something you can turn the switch overnight. So there'll be a lot of continuous improvement for sure the next decade, and the Canadian prairies. You guys are all on a truly remarkable trajectory, and you have a lot of momentum right now. So keep riding that momentum.
That's all the questions that I had for you. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to emphasize.
I guess the only thing I would emphasize is be humble, be persistent, come with that learning approach to any training event you go to, whether it's a Canadian Prairies TREX event, a Loess Hills Cooperative Burn Week event, or just your daily stewardship workshops or anything. Challenge yourself to learn something every day, and that'll raise the bar for yourself, and it'll raise the bar for everybody around you.
For sure. And I'd just like to thank you, Kody, just so much for coaching and mentoring the CPPFE and helping us develop our TREX program. Like, this is so crucial to our prescribed fire efforts, and we genuinely appreciate your help so much.
It's truly been a pleasure. It's something I look forward to every year, is getting up there and seeing my northern friends, and seeing some fantastic sunsets on the Saskatchewan prairies, and meeting new people, and that's what it's all about.
For sure. And the sunsets are very beautiful. But yes, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Kody.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Prairie Firelines on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or visit our website at grasslandfire.ca to stay updated on all things prescribed fire in the prairies. Huge thank you goes out to the Weston's Prairie Grassland Initiative for making this project possible, and to all of you for listening. Until next time, stay curious about the power of prescribed fire. This is Prairie Firelines, where we keep the conversation burning. And I'm your host, Kat Zenz, signing off.